After reading this question, we see that it's an elastic collision, which means that there will be two conservation laws in effect. First, momentum. So our momentum equation will look like m1 times its velocity of 3.3, and it will equal our momentum after the collision. So that will be m1 v1 plus 3m1 v2, because the second mass is 3 times larger than the first. Our second conservation law is the law of conservation of energy, and so that equation will become 1 half m1 times 3.3 squared equals 1 half m1 v1 squared plus 1 half 3m1 v2 squared. So these are my two equations. Now, with those two equations, before we do any numbers, let's do some canceling. So the first equation, all terms have an m1 value in them, so we can divide those all out. And the second equation, not only do they all have an m1 term, but they also have a 1/2 term, so we can cancel out or divide out all the 1/2s. So our equations become 3.3 equals v1 plus 3v2, and 3.3 squared equals v1 squared plus 3v2 squared. So need we solve these two together? We have two unknowns, two equations. We should be able to solve them simultaneously. So the first thing we'll do is we'll solve the first equation for one of the two variables. Obviously, it's easier to do v1. So v1 will equal 3.3 minus 3 v2. Now once that's done, we're going to substitute that into equation 2. So writing that out, well, 3.3 squared is 10.89 equals 3.3 minus 3v2 squared plus 3v2 squared. So this is the equation we have to solve for v2. So we will go on to do that, and let's list that equation again. 10.89 equals 3.3 minus 3v2 squared, excuse me, that's not right, minus 3.3 v2 squared plus 3v2 squared. I think my memory serves me correctly there. So now we have to square or FOIL this term in the middle. So we will get 10.89 equals 10.89 minus 19.8 v2 plus 9 v2 squared plus 3v2 squared. So now we'll do some simplifying here. We can subtract this over to the other side. When we do, they all cancel. So this will become 0 equals 12.v2 squared, that's these two added together, minus 19.8 v2. So we can factor that, or we could use the quadratic equation, or we could graph it to solve for v2. We'll factor here 0 equals V2 times 12 V2 minus 19.8. So since it equals 0, either of these two factors can be 0. So V2 can equal 0, or 12V2 minus 19.8 can equal 0. In this case, that means V2 will equal 1.65 meters per second. So we have to decide which one of these two answers are correct. Is it 0 or is it 1.65? Well, it was originally at 0, so it can't not move after being hit. So this has to be the correct answer. So V2 has to equal that. So now how do I find V1? And you've guessed it, we take it back and put it into our equation and solve for V1. So V1 equals 3.3 minus 3 times 1.65, and we solve that for V1, and we will get minus 1.65 meters per second. So what does this mean? It means one ball will continue to the right at 1.6365, and the other ball will ricochet backwards because it's negative at 1.65. And those two answers are the solution to the problem.